Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast here. I'm Gustavo Tolosa. Maybe I think you're seeing in the screen Dr. Gustavo Tolosa. I am not a medical doctor. My doctorate is a DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts. I'm a concert pianist, and I'm known as the plant-powered pianist. And you've seen many of my videos where I cook for you, and then I do a little concert for you to enjoy the food that we've prepared together. So today, a dream of mine is coming true, which is to interview Brenda Davis, who is an incredible speaker and an amazing professional in the world of nutrition. Just in case that you haven't heard of her, although I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have, let me just read a little bit about Brenda Davis, who is a registered dietitian, is a leader in her field, and an internationally acclaimed speaker. She has worked as a public health nutritionist, clinical nutrition specialist, nutrition consultant, and academic nutrition instructor. Brenda is the lead dietitian in a diabetes research project in Majuro, Marshall Islands. She is a featured speaker at nutrition and medical and health conferences throughout the world. And of course, that's where I heard her speak many times. And then I met her a few years ago in person in a conference in Dallas. So she has, oh my goodness, she's been a author and co-author of 13 award-winning best-selling books. And her books are vegetarian, vegan nutrition classics with close to 1 million copies in print in 12 languages. She is a past chair of the Vegetarian Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group of the American Dietetics Association. And in 2007, she was inducted into the Vegetarian Hall of Fame. So Brenda was the 7th recipient of the Plantrition Project's Luminary Award. And she lives in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with her husband, Paul, and her 2 grown children. And she also has 3 grandchildren. So anyways, I am thrilled to present you Brenda Davis, and I welcome you. How are you doing today, Brenda?
Well, I'm very well, and I'm very honored to be on your program, Gustavo. Thank you so much for the work you're doing to spread this message and to promote healthy eating in the world and healthy living. So I'm really excited to be with you all today. So thanks for being here, for all of the people that are listening.
Well, I love it. I love to do this kind of interviews. I love to do cooking sessions and other programs. So thank you, thank you. Today we have a very important topic that it has become a focus of my own learning and research. And let me just say something really quickly. Since we were talking about books, I do want to mention something a little for just 30 seconds, okay? Because this was very important in my life too. There was a project to write a book with my friend Shaida Soleimani, and the book is a work of love. We wanted to share our stories. We both were successful in losing over 170 pounds and keeping it off. And so we wanted to tell our stories. Shaida has a background from like Persian cuisine, and I from Argentina. And so we wrote this book called Live Your Healthiest Life, which Chef AJ wrote the foreword. Our dear Dr. McDougall wrote, comments, with the same with Dr. Barnard and many other doctors. And what we did here was tell our stories. And so it's a storytelling book. And as the story goes on, we include recipes from our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers. And so it's a fun book. It's a little bit different than other cookbooks. We tell our story, and you are looking at these recipes. So just wanted to mention that if you are interested in getting this book, it's available on Amazon. And if you get it and send us an email, we can send you a PDF with extra recipes that didn't make it to the book. So thank you for your patience, Brenda.
Oh well, congratulations on doing this book. It's a wonderful contribution to the literature, and I'm very excited to read it and to try your recipes. It sounds wonderful.
Well, yes, I will be sending you a copy of the book. So let's go ahead and get started with today's topic, which is omega-3, well, basically omega fatty acid, and specifically the omega-3 and 6. And before we dive into more specific questions, since this seems to be a confusing issue or topic, would you be willing to just give us the basics of what they are, what functions they fulfill, what is the optimal ratio? And I'm interested in knowing if there is a way to test the level of our omega fatty acids.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an important topic and one that I've been passionate about for my entire career. And so just to dial it back a bit, there are three main categories of fats: the saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats. And while most of the fatty acids can actually be made by our bodies, there are two that we can't make. And that means we have to get them from food. And so these are known as essential fatty acids. And both of the essential fatty acids actually fall within the polyunsaturated fatty acid family. And within the polyunsaturated fats, that it's further categorized into two separate families, the omega-6 family and the omega-3 family. And the two essential fatty acids are linoleic acid in the omega-6 family and alpha-linolenic acid in the omega-3 family. And so the big difference between omega-3s and omega-6s is just kind of a chemistry. It's really the omega-3s have their carbon double bond is present in the third bond from the methyl end of the molecule, whereas the omega-6s are present. The first double bond is at the sixth omega position. And so, linoleic acid is what we call the parent fat of the omega-6 family, and alpha-linolenic acid is the parent fatty acid for the omega-3 family. And they're called parent fatty acids because essentially they can make, via elongation and desaturation, these bigger, more highly unsaturated, more biologically active long chain fatty acids. And so, for example, in the omega-3 family, alpha-linolenic acid can be converted to stearidonic acid and eicosapentaenoic acid and docosapentaenoic acid, and then, of course, to DHA or docosahexaenoic acid. And so these fats are, a lot of people think of fat as just bad, but these fats are not only not bad, they're really essential to life, without which we could not survive. And so we talk a lot about these two families and how much of each we should get and the balance between the two. And in fact, the two families use the same enzymes to create these bigger, longer fats. And so they can compete for those enzymes. So if there's 10 times more omega-6 than omega-3, which is the case for many people, it can negatively impact the conversion of omega-3s into the long chain omega-3s. And so it's, omega-6s can when you think they negatively impact a conversion of omega-3s, all of the wonderful things omega-3s can do for us and need to do for us will be impacted. And so, you know, the omega, the sort of ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is often, as I mentioned, 10 to 1 or higher in favor of omega-6. But most experts suggest it should be around 2 to 1 to 4 to 1. And so that's not that easy to achieve, and most people don't achieve it. And so there are things we can do to achieve it, which we can talk about if you like. But I do need to say this, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is not nearly as important in people who get direct sources of these big long chain omega-3s, DHA and EPA. The main direct source in the human diet is fish. And so plant-based eaters don't get a lot of EPA and DHA. Lacto-ovo vegetarians get a little bit from eggs, especially if the chickens are fed flax or fish. And vegans might get a little bit from seaweed, a little bit of EPA, not DHA, but not much, unless you eat a ton of seaweed, which could be risky because of the high iodine content. So basically, many vegans consume no EPA and DHA at all. So they really rely on conversion. And so that ratio is more important for people that rely on conversion than it is for people with direct sources of EPA and DHA. Now, the other thing I want to say is that whereas fish is an important point, an important omega-3 source for omnivores, fish actually get their EPA and DHA from little plants in the ocean. And now we have many companies that are literally growing these microalgae and then extracting the EPA and DHA. So vegans can purchase supplements that provide these long chain omega-3s.
Okay, that's very interesting because we have a question here, and I really wasn't sure if it would be best to consume these as liquid capsules, or I mean, for us, I am a whole food plant-based, eater, so
Yes.
I don't eat fish or any other meat. And so, for what would you recommend? Because most of the people that are following me are vegan, like whole food, plant-based. What would the
Yes,
best way?
and I am as well. I am completely vegan. I'm pretty much whole food, plant-based. I make everything from scratch. But I will tell you, just so people know, the main sources of linoleic acid, the omega-6, are seeds like sunflower, safflower, corn,
Mm.
sesame, hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, grapeseed oil, soybeans, soybean oil, wheat germ, walnuts. Grains are all sources of linoleic acid. Now, alpha-linolenic acid, which is the omega-3, the plant-based omega-3, it is not sort of as commonly spread among different plant foods. So it's more concentrated in fewer foods, is what I'm saying. So flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seed, walnuts, canola oil. Soybeans have some, but the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is about 7 to 1. So it's still much more in favor of the omega-6s. A wheat germ has some as well, but the ratio is about 8 to 1. Greens, now green leafy vegetables, about half the the essential fatty acids are omega-3s, but the problem is that they're very low in fat. So you would have to almost eat like a horse or a cow to get enough just from greens. You would need 20 or 30 cups. And so it's a lot. And so these sources are, certainly available. They're not terribly expensive. They can be easily incorporated into the diet. You don't need a lot of chia or flax seeds to meet your, to get 2 or 3 grams of ALA. You might need, a tablespoon and a half of ground flax, or, about the same of chia. But because you get it from other foods as well, little bits, you would probably be fine with just a tablespoon of either one of those or a couple of tablespoons of hemp seeds. But I have to say, EPA and DHA are the most biologically active omega-3s, and their role in health is really quite important. ALA is important too. It's necessary for growth and development. It helps to maintain a normal heart rhythm and blood flow and all of those things. So they're all important. But in vegans that would have to rely on conversion isn't very efficient. It's very slow, and there are a lot of things that depress conversion. So eating a lot of omega-3s is one of them, or omega-6s, I should say, is one of them. It will depress conversion of omega-3. Not getting enough protein, not getting enough trace minerals like zinc and magnesium, and these cofactors for conversion. Smoking, drinking alcohol, being from if your heritage is, say, Japanese, or your people that for many generations consumed fish, and so you were getting direct sources, your desaturase enzymes might not be revved up as much as people that need to convert. And then there are various diseases that can reduce conversion, like hypertension and diabetes, for example, can depress those conversion enzymes. And so and we know men don't convert as well as women, and young women convert most efficiently. As we get older, our conversion wanes. So it to me makes sense to consider also including a direct source of EPA and DHA. And so that's, it's optional. I do it myself using a vegan microalgae based supplement. And, again, just so people understand why this might be important. Well, these long chain omega-3s, they're critical parts of our cell membranes. They influence the flexibility and permeability and fluidity of cell membranes and how components get in and out of cells. They are extremely important to brain health. About 60% of the brain is fat, and of that, most of it is actually DHA. And so we see cognitive, more rapid cognitive decline with lower levels of these long chain omega-3s. And actually, I just heard an interview by Gary Fraser, who is one of the leads in the Adventist Health Study 2, and he was saying that they're actually starting to see in quite elderly vegans some cognitive impairment that may be related, in his view, to a lack of long chain omega-3s. So there are definitely reasons to consider supplementation.
Right. I'm going to ask you a question that is a little controversial because a lot of us don't use oil. We're oil-free. And so there are questions here about, taking this oil supplement or diet oil supplement. And of course, we all know that oil is what is the highest caloric, food with 4,000 calories. And it's just fat. But isn't a lot of the processed or highly processed foods that people eat in the Western world full of oil? Isn't that the reason why the balance is off, because all of these oils are high in omega-6, or is there another reason for that imbalance?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the main reasons for the imbalance are, as you said, we consume probably 60% or more of our diet as ultra-processed foods. And these ultra-processed foods are made from the cheapest carbohydrates, the cheapest proteins, the cheapest fats. And so often these very cheap fats, it may be palm oil or lard or whatever, but it also often is these omega-6 rich oils like sunflower and safflower and corn and soy and so forth. And so that will tip the balance very rapidly when these foods are so high in fat. Many of them are fried in these fats, and so the levels are very high. And that tips the balance very, very rapidly. And of course, people often use oils to cook their foods in. And the oils that are really popular are often these omega-6 rich oils as well. So that's really why the balance has gotten, to 10 to 1 to 20 to 1 in some people. While we know that 2 to 1 to 4 to 1 is probably more optimal.
Right, right. And so would you recommend people to go to the whole food source for this, like walnut or any other nuts instead of oil, or what would be the best?
Yes, absolutely. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about carbohydrate, protein, or fat. All macronutrients, we're always better off getting those macronutrients from whole foods, because whole foods naturally come packaged with fiber and phytochemicals and antioxidants and prebiotics and all of these very protective substances. They have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties and so on. Whereas when we extract a macronutrient, it doesn't matter if it's carbohydrate, fat, or protein. When we extract a micronutrient, we leave all that good stuff behind. So if we're extracting sugar or starch, we're leaving 90% of what's of value to human health behind. And it's interesting when you're talking about carbohydrates. You take a kernel of wheat, you turn it into white flour, you lose 90% of the, probably 70 to 90% of the vitamins, minerals, fibers, so on. And then nobody eats a bowl of white flour. You add fat and sugar and salt and flavors and colors and all of these preservatives and all of these components we know are damaging to human health. So not only have we removed the good stuff, we've added a bunch of bad stuff. And it's the same story with fats. Even with protein, we extract protein from milk to make whey protein, or extract soy protein, and it's just concentrated protein without all of those other beneficial components. But with fats, when we make oils, often they're deodorized, degummed, heated. They're put through a heavy refining process, and these are among the most I should say the least nutrient dense foods on the planet. So you get a lot of calories, at 120 calories per tablespoon, with almost no nutrients. You get a tiny bit of nutrients from some fresh pressed oils, like if it's an extra virgin olive oil or a fresh pressed flaxseed oil, you will still get some bioactive compounds in there that are phytochemicals, little bit of vitamin E, little bit of, some little bit of nutrients, but traces. Traces. Yeah. Nothing like what the original food contained.
Right.
And so you're always better off getting your macronutrients from whole foods. So from where fat is concerned, we're talking about nuts, seeds, avocados. Soy foods are fairly high in fat. Chickpeas are a little higher in fat than most other legumes. So all of these whole food fats are highly beneficial to health.
Right. I would like to underline that, because people are so used to, and at one point I was going and buying a pill for this and a pill of that, and with supplements, and not realizing that extracting one component and flooding yourself with one thing, just because it's good, doesn't mean that a lot of it is better. It can actually throw the body out of balance.
It does. And the best example of that is one that I think shocked the scientific community when we learned that carotenoids were found to be protective against lung cancer. And so then a bunch of studies were started to look at if we gave beta carotene in pill form, could we really reduce the risk of lung cancer? And what ended up happening is it actually increased the risk, not decreased the risk. Whereas, beta carotene was a marker. They found high levels of beta carotene in the blood associated with lower risk. So then why would the supplement cause higher risk? And in my view, it's probably because beta carotene is one of multiple carotenoids in food. If you load the system up with beta carotene, it probably blocks you end up not absorbing, you're saturated with carotenoids, so you don't absorb them from your food as well. And to protect us, we probably need a variety of all of these carotenoids along with other components from the foods to provide protection. So, you extract one thing and you don't know what you're creating, because our bodies are very complex, and that mix of nutrients and phytonutrients in foods is very important for optimal functioning. Now with EPA and DHA, that's a little bit of a different story, because, and even with vitamin B12, with vitamin D, there's some nutrients that may be lacking, just like there are in omnivorous diets. And I think this is a really important point. So, with omnivorous diets, vitamin D is also lacking. So what did we do? We added it to cow's milk. Well, we add it to plant-based milks as well now. Iodine is the nutrient that's associated with brain with cognitive dysfunction. It's the number one cause of cognitive dysfunction globally. So we added it to something that is widely available for very little money all over the world, which is salt. So iodized salt provided this source of iodine. We added folic acid or folate to flour. We added B vitamins and iron to flour when we refined it. And so we've always been doing this to try to minimize nutritional deficiencies in the population. And so just because there's something short in a plant-based diet doesn't mean there are not things short in an omnivorous diet as well. But in a plant-based diet, vitamin B12 is definitely one that stands out. And so it makes sense that we need to be taking a vitamin B12 supplement. And with EPA and DHA, if we're not converting ALA into these long-chain omega-3s, we don't know for sure that we absolutely need to take EPA and DHA, but it seems that it's a reasonable choice for people, especially as we get older, especially if we have hypertension or diabetes or some condition that may impair conversion of alpha-linolenic acid.
Right. So for those of us who want to go to Whole Foods and not start extracting, different parts of the food, could you just one more time give us an idea of what can we eat? What can I eat to at least get to a reasonable ratio between these two and not taking supplements?
Yes, absolutely. So the two things that you want to do. Well, number one is you want to make sure you're getting a diet that is varied and that provides a decent amount of all of the vitamins and minerals you need, because they're important for that conversion process. Number two is you want to make sure you get enough alpha-linolenic acid, which means that you want to be including chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts. These are our most concentrated sources. And so one of the things that I do is I make a mix of chia, flax, and hemp. So I grind my flax seed and then mix it with chia seeds and hemp seeds, sometimes a few pumpkin seeds, because they're such a good source of zinc and iron. And so I make this mix that I can sprinkle on things. And then the other thing is of course walnuts, and so how much do we need? Well, you'd need about an ounce of walnuts. It would give you about 2.6 grams of alpha-linolenic acid. What you're aiming for is about 2 to 3 grams. The American Canadian acceptable intakes are 1.1 grams for women, 1.6 for men. But that is assuming you've got a source of EPA and DHA. If you don't have a source of EPA and DHA, I suggest doubling the AI, which would mean 2.2 grams for women, 3.2 for men. And so how do we get that? Well, as I mentioned, an ounce of walnuts will do the trick. Chia seeds, flax seeds, you get about 1.6 to 1.8 grams in a tablespoon of ground flax, or a tablespoon of chia seeds. You get close to a gram from a tablespoon of hemp seeds. So you can kind of do the math, and even a tablespoon of chia or a tablespoon of flax or a tablespoon of the mix, chia, flax, and hemp would likely be enough, considering you're going to get some from soy, you'll get some from greens, you'll get some little bits in other foods as well. So that's a reasonable, I think, a reasonable thing to do. And then the other thing to do is you want to put a bit of a lid on the omega-6s. And so for people eating whole food plant-based diets, it's not very difficult to do, because basically the way to put the lid on it is not to use omega-6 rich oils and highly processed foods or ultra processed foods made with those oils. So those are the main ways of putting a lid on omega-6s. Having some sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, not generally a problem unless you're eating them by the bowlful. You know, if you sprinkle some on your salad, some on your breakfast bowl, that's absolutely not a problem. You need some omega-6s. So, you know, you want some omega-6s, some omega-3s, but if you make sure you're getting enough omega-3s, limit omega-6s in the ways that I mentioned, you'll be there. It's not difficult to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just that I think it's so much easier to get the omega-6 because of the amount of ultra processed foods that a lot of people eat that have a lot of these, you know, cheap kind of oils that are loaded with omega-6. And so,
right.
the you know, you were saying the chia seeds, the flax seeds, hemp seeds, you know, you can put that, correct me if I'm wrong, on oatmeal. You can sprinkle them on salads, or you can put them in soups. I mean, you can put them just about anywhere, right?
Absolutely. And just so people know, if you're making a smoothie, or you're doing some sort of blended food, the chia and the flax are extremely high in soluble fiber, so they get quite gluey if you're putting them in something like that. And they get gluey, so they actually make a really good egg replacement when you're doing baking, like muffins and so forth, because of that stickiness. Hemp seeds they don't have that. And so if you're making a smoothie, hemp seeds are much more palatable in a smoothie. It just makes the smoothie creamier. It doesn't make it gluey. So that can be very appealing for those kinds of purposes, or for making a salad dressing. For example, if you don't want it to be so gluey, you can use hemp seeds in your salad dressing. So that's just, you know, a little bit about the food preparation stuff. But certainly I have that mix I put on my breakfast bowl every morning. You can put it on a salad. You can do any of that, as you mentioned. Now, flax seeds are very slippery little seeds. And so if you don't grind them, you know, they'll add to your stool bulk as much as what you'll break down and get as omega-3. So yeah, because we don't chew them that usually that well.
No. And would those seeds be as efficient or effective if they are being baked, like in a muffin or in bread or something, or is it better to not put them through high heat or baking?
Well, you know, there actually have been a number of studies that have looked at that. And it's really surprising, even with ground flax, there's not a lot of degradation of the omega-3s when they're baked in a muffin or even cooked in a pancake. It seems to be absolutely fine. Obviously, if you're cooking them for long periods, then
Right.
it could be a little bit different. But it's just pretty safe to be using them in cooking.
Okay. Can you tell us how we could, our doctors can, give us an idea of how to measure this balance? Like, I don't know if what my omega-3, 6 balance is. I do my regular blood work test, but should I be asking for that, for something that will measure that?
Yeah, so most doctors, most regular medical labs don't measure omega-3s or omega-6s on a regular basis, but there are many labs that do a test called the omega-3 index, and it's usually special labs. You can do it on your own. You can order a kit. All they need is a drop of blood, and there are many companies that do this. I think some are better than others. But basically, when you get your results, some will just measure EPA and DHA in the blood. Some will measure a lot more fatty acids, as many as, a dozen or 24 or whatever. Depending on the price you're willing to pay, you'll get more and more analytics done. And so generally with the omega-3 index, most clinicians are wanting you to aim for an index of 8%. The average American is around 5%. The average vegan is probably around 3 or 4%. The omega-3 and an omega-3 index between 4 and 7% is considered sort of marginally insufficient, whereas an index lower than 4% is actually considered deficient. And because omega-3s can impact overall cognitive function, you want that measure to show something close to 8%.
Right. Okay, so I'm wondering, is there a study or something that shows that if I eat a lot of flax seeds or chia seeds, is there a toxicity level of omega-3, or can I eat 5 or 6 or 7 tablespoons of those seeds a day?
Yeah, so chia seeds and flax seeds are both more the issue because they're very concentrated in omega-3s. But they're very, very high in soluble fiber. They have a very low GI. They're super, super healthy seeds. They can be a wonderful addition to the diet. But and they have different benefits. So chia seeds are really high in calcium. Flax seeds are really high in lignans, and lignans are pretty potent anti-carcinogens. But flax seeds contain something called cyanogenic glycosides, so they contain some cyanide. And a lot of foods contain cyanide. It's not just flax seeds. There are lots and lots of foods. Apple seeds, apricot seeds are, more concentrated sources, but cassava root, and there are many, many sources of, even lima beans. There are lots of sources of cyanide in foods, and our bodies have an ability to detoxify cyanide fairly efficiently. We need enough protein though, because protein is part of that breakdown. But it's important to recognize that we can overdo flax seeds, especially. And so the World Health Organization has this thing called the provisional maximum tolerable daily intake. The highest amount, like in terms of cyanide, there have been studies showing that 9 tablespoons could put you up into the potentially toxic amount of cyanide a day in one sitting. But this PMTDI, or the provisional maximum tolerable daily intake, looks at how much you could eat every day for life and have no adverse impacts. and it includes 100-fold uncertainty factor. So it has this huge sort of, added safety margin. And so this evidence that using this PMTDI suggests around 1.5 tablespoons is a very safe intake. I think up to 2 tablespoons is probably safe every day over time. I wouldn't worry about intakes of up to that level. Now, that having been said, that does not include cooked flaxseed, because cooking can destroy the cyanogenic glycosides. So, but again, it gets complicated.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get broken down very efficiently if it's dry heat. So if you're doing it in a cracker or something, it won't be broken down the same as in bread and muffins, and putting the flax in your oatmeal. That will break down the cyanogenic glycosides very efficiently. So you wouldn't have to count the flax used in those applications, just the raw flax or the dry cooked flax that you would need to and chia seeds don't have cyanogenic glycosides, so the issue is not there for them. But I think it's important to note that because these are very high in soluble fiber, and chia seeds are like a water sponge, they can cause some gastrointestinal upset for some people. And so if you're eating massive amounts, it could be problematic from a GI perspective. Also, you want to be conscious that even though we want to get, 2 to 4 or so grams of ALA a day, you don't necessarily want 20 grams. You don't want to go in the other direction. You still want that balance of omega-6 to omega-3. So it is absolutely possible to go in the other direction too far if you're eating massive amounts of this stuff. And of course, nuts and seeds are high in calories too. So that's another reason to be, moderate in your intake.
Right. Because they can be a roadblock for people that are really trying to lose weight. So you've got
to, for most nuts, you're looking at 600 to 800 calories per cup. So it's a lot. It can be slightly less for seeds. And this is important for people to recognize. Generally, seeds are more nutrient dense than nuts. So a lot of people don't know that, but seeds are the main source of essential fatty acids, and walnuts we'd have to include in that. But they are higher in protein, higher in trace minerals, and just generally more nutrient dense. They contain mainly polyunsaturated fat, whereas nuts contain mainly monounsaturated fat. So they're not as high in the essential fatty acids, with the exception of walnuts. So I think that's good for people to know as well. And nuts are much easier to overeat than seeds are. So people aren't going to take a bowl of flax seeds and just spoon them in. Whereas, you could take a bowl of peanuts or almonds, peanuts are technically a legume, but we eat them as a nut and use them from a culinary perspective as a nut. But we can easily eat a bowl full of nuts, especially if they're coated in salt.
Especially,
they're easy to eat.
Well, what I'm really getting from this wonderful talk that you're giving us is that we human beings try to want the easy fix, like tell me what food, or tell me what pill, or what oil. Actually, everything is more complex. Our bodies are more complex. These foods are more, they interact, and just extracting one thing. So I'm getting the idea that let's eat a variety, like you said earlier, of foods, a variety of colors, the rainbow, like we say, and also let's try to stay as much as possible to the whole food. So we eat the whole package that brings everything in perfect balance, and we're not, taking one out. And someone is asking a very good question. So I want to ask you, he says, so Dr. Davis is saying, if you get an abundance of omega-3 and less of omega-6, is there a conversion to DHA and EPA?
From the omega-6? From the omega-6?
The question is, so is Dr. Davis saying if you get an abundance of omega-3 and less omega-6, is there a conversion to the DHA and EPA?
Oh, there definitely is some conversion to EPA and DHA if you've got everything in place. So you have a good diet with enough protein, enough trace minerals. It's a balanced diet. You are not a smoker. You know, you've got the enzymes functioning in your body adequately. In young women, we have a study showing a 36% conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA. And I believe it was about 9% or so to EPA and you know, 8 or 9 to the other DPA and DHA. So all 3 long chain omega-3s. But the conversion was really impressive in young women. It wasn't as impressive in young men. It was about 16%, about 8 to EPA and 8 to DHA. There was, or to DPA, none to DHA. So conversion it may be better in young children. We've never tested it. It's not as good in older people as we get older. It's not as good in people with diabetes, but there will be some conversion, and conversion will be less if you take in direct sources of EPA and DHA like fish, because your body won't have to convert. So you won't do as much conversion if you're getting direct sources, but your body will definitely convert some. Generally, you convert more efficiently to EPA than to DHA. So EPA generally better conversion, very, very small conversion to DHA. But yes, you do. So if you have that balance of 2 to 1 to 4 to 1, your maximum, there have been many studies looking at how do we maximize conversion, and that ratio 2 to 1 to 4 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3, we get a pretty decent conversion. When we get above that, it depresses the conversion enzymes, and it can reduce conversion by up to 60% when we get a lot of 6s compared to 3s.
Wow. Yeah. So is it true that omega-6 promotes inflammation in the body at high levels, and omega-3 does the opposite, or is that too simplistic to put it?
Yeah, it's a little bit simplistic, but getting back to just a little quick review of fat. Fat is important, and both omega-6 and omega-3 are essential. They provide energy and calories. They protect our organs. They are an essential structural component of the body. So as I mentioned, cell membranes are made up of fatty acids. About 60% of the brain is fat. Fat is necessary also for the absorption of fat-soluble nutrients. So if you eat a meal with no fat, it will compromise your absorption of vitamins A, D, E, and K, all of which are fat-soluble vitamins. And phytonutrients that are fat-soluble, like carotenoids, won't be as well absorbed if there's no fat in the meal. But that doesn't mean you have to pour oil on your meal. You can get fat from tofu or from pumpkin seeds or whatever. And then fats, this is the other thing. Fats serve as precursors for a variety of eicosanoids, resolvins, protectins. This is where that anti-inflammatory thing comes in. And so these are produced mainly from EPA, but resolvins and protectins can also be produced from DHA. And they can help to control a lot of body systems. They can impact blood clotting, wound healing, inflammation, all of those things. So omega-3s have been traditionally thought of as being highly anti-inflammatory because of all of these eicosanoids and resolvins and protectants they produce. So many people assume omega-6s are pro-inflammatory because we do see more inflammatory eicosanoids formed from arachidonic acid, which is kind of the long chain omega-6 fat. But just to say eating linoleic acid is inflammatory has actually not panned out. In fact, a lot of the studies looking at heart disease show that linoleic acid is actually protective and can actually help to reduce inflammation. So we need to be a little bit careful about, saying omega-6s are all inflammatory, omega-3s are all anti-inflammatory. Linoleic acid is converted into dihomogamma-linolenic acid, and that tends to be actually quite protective. It's when it gets converted further along that the eicosanoids formed from arachidonic acid, which incidentally comes mainly from meat, will tend to be a little more pro-inflammatory. So it is a little bit more complicated than what we may believe.
Right.
Both of these essential fats are essential. And so, yes, we want to put a bit of a lid on omega-6s, but we still need them. And we get them. We get them in grains. We get them in seeds and other foods as well.
Right. Well, I know that there are people that maybe came a little late and are asking about supplements and oils. So I'm not ignoring you, but if you go back and listen to the beginning, we were discussing that topic. A few people here have asked about where do poppy seeds measure up?
Poppy seeds again are mostly omega-6s. So so they're more omega-6s. They're not rich in omega-3. So they would fall in the same category as sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds in terms, but they are mainly polyunsaturated fat as well.
Yeah. All right. I just see how much easier it is for us to get omega-6 than it is to get omega-3.
Exactly.
That can be.
Very few foods are concentrated in omega-3s.
Okay. Well, Dr. Davis, I know we've taken about an hour of your time, and I'm really appreciative. And I know there are more questions. This is, to me, is a fascinating topic, and maybe someday we could do one more webinar.
Absolutely. I'd be very happy to do one more and take more of the questions for sure.
Yes, because there are questions. Well, as we watch the recording of this webinar, we will have questions. And so everybody here, you can email me questions if like, and at some point in the future, if Dr. Davis is, generous, as she usually is, we could do one more and take some more questions. So, but I want to thank you, Dr. Davis, one more time, and thank everybody here for attending. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Anything else that maybe we left out that you really wanted to say about these omega-3 and omega fatty acids?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is, again, fats are not poison. Fats have such a bad rap because the way that we get fat is often from deep frying foods and frying foods in a lot of oil and so forth. The fats that are naturally intrinsic to whole foods are consistently protective to health. And as a matter of fact, and people may not realize this, but there are a number of studies that have actually looked at nut and seed consumption and, how do they impact health? And in fact, there was a study, I believe it was 2023, that it was a meta-analysis. I believe it was about 42 articles that they used, about 2 million, close to 2 million participants. And they found that nut and seed consumption in the highest versus lowest consumption categories was associated with about a 20% risk reduction for cardiovascular disease, and even a higher, around 25% risk reduction for cardiovascular disease mortality. It reduced risk of stroke, type 2 diabetes, cholesterol levels. So and that's the most recent meta-analysis we have. And so nuts and seeds very consistently are protective. And so I think we need to remember that it's when we get our protein, fat, or carbohydrate from whole foods, they're pretty consistently protective to human health.
Right. Let's eat whole foods. So
Yes.
that's yeah. One more question. What would be your favorite breakfast, for example?
Okay, well, my breakfast, I'm a creature of habit. I love to have a breakfast bowl. And so my breakfast bowl, I usually have 2 or 3 or 4 different fruits. So whatever's in season, it may be apples and bananas and raspberries and pomegranate seeds. It just depends. My favorite would be peaches and blueberries and raspberries, a lot of berries. I love
Right.
berries.
Oh,
But so I start with that, and then I add some cooked intact grains, and I cook the grains with a bit of lentils to boost my intake of protein, iron, zinc, and so on. So it might be oat groats, quinoa, and lentils, or it might be kamut berries and barley and lentils, but I have some sort of mix like that. And then to make it all creamy and delicious, I add in some, and this is either hot or cold, but I usually have it cold. So I make a big enough batch to last probably 5 days. And then I put in some chia pudding, and my chia pudding is just, I use unsweetened soy milk with hemp seeds and some prunes for sweetness, a couple of prunes, and then just blend it up and put the chia seeds in, and that's my chia pudding that goes on. And then I put on a little, I cook either blueberries or Italian prune plums to make a stewed fruit, and I'll put a little stewed fruit on top. And then my seed mix, so my hemp, chia, flaxseed mix, and then I do a dehydrated granola. That granola often has oil and sugar as the wet ingredients. Mine is a little bit of nut butter, apple, banana, orange, whatever fruit.
Yes.
And then it's dehydrated.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, that sounds like a very delicious bowl. So
it is a really good bowl.
Yeah. I love oat groats with like you were saying with other grains. Especially, I like quinoa with oat groats, but
Yes.
And berries, all those berries for antioxidants. Well, thank you again, much appreciated, and
Thank
we'll
you
see
for
you
inviting
all
me, Gustavo.
soon. Oh no, it's totally my honor, pleasure. Actually, I forgot to put this on the screen or in the comments here, just in case that anybody does get the book that I was talking about, the Live Your Healthiest Life. Here, if you send us an email to that email address, you're going to be able to get the extra recipes. And this is how you're going to eat whole foods, okay? And hopefully get the ratio a little bit more balanced. So I appreciate your support. And that's it for today. So have a wonderful rest of the week, everybody. And I'll be seeing you next.
Thanks for joining us. And thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.